The autumn rain in Oak Ridge, Vermont didn't fall at time's collapsed asterisk. It came down in thick, gray curtains that turned the streetlights into bleeding halos and swallowed the yellow center lines whole. By 6:30 that evening, most of Oak Ridge had retreated indoors to kitchens smelling of soup, to living rooms with televisions glowing amber, to the particular warmth that small towns generate when the sky turns hostile. Daniel Hayes was not indoors. He was still 40 minutes from home, sitting behind the wheel of his 2009 Ford F-150 with a cracked defroster and a wiper's blade that had been threatening to give out since July. His thermos of coffee had gone cold somewhere around mile 12 of the county road. His shoulders ached with the deep, specific pain of a man who had spent 12 hours swinging a mallet and dragging oak beams across a muddy construction site. The kind of ache that doesn't just sit in the muscle, it nests there. He was 35 years old, and he looked it on days like this. Not old, exactly, just used. His hands on the steering wheel were thick and calloused, the knuckles permanently stained with a ghost of wood stain that never quite washed out. His dark hair was wet from running to the truck without an umbrella, and a thin scar ran along the outer edge of his left jaw, a souvenir from a table saw incident 4 years ago that he now described to his daughter Lily simply as a mistake Daddy learned from. Lily. Just thinking her name made the ache in his shoulders ease a degree or two. She was 7 years old. She had her mother's dark brown eyes and her father's stubbornness, which was either going to serve her beautifully or exhaust everyone around her for decades to come. Right now, she was at the house with Daniel's younger brother, Marcus, probably already in her pajamas, probably already negotiating for 15 more minutes before bedtime. Marcus was 29 and generally useless in a cheerful, well-intentioned way, which made him a surprisingly excellent babysitter. He never said no to anything, which Lily had figured out approximately 11 seconds after birth. Daniel's wife, Rachel, had been gone for 5 years. Ovarian cancer, swift and merciless. It had taken her in 7 months from diagnosis to the last morning Daniel had sat beside her hospital bed holding her hand and listening to the monitors go quiet. Lily had been 2 years old. She didn't remember her mother except through photographs, through the smell of lavender that Daniel had kept in a small sachet in Rachel's side of the closet for years, through the stories he told her every night before she went to sleep. He was tired tonight. Bone tired. Rain tired. He wanted soup, and he wanted his daughter's weight against his arm while he read to her, and he wanted to sleep without the low-frequency hum of worry that had lived behind his sternum since the day Rachel died. He almost didn't see her. The bus stop at Millfield Corner was not much to look at, even in good weather, a weathered wooden bench beneath a rusted metal awning, half the size needed to keep anyone actually dry. In good weather, maybe 3 people a week sat there. It served the county route that ran twice daily, stopping at Oak Ridge proper before continuing south toward Burlington. The last bus on a Tuesday evening ran at 4:15. It was 6:47 p.m. Daniel's headlights swept across the bench as he rounded the curve, the way they did every time he took this road, and in the same way a person can drive a familiar route for years without truly seeing it. He almost didn't register what his eyes were actually processing. But something made him look. She was sitting perfectly still. That was what stopped him, the stillness. Not the stillness of someone comfortable, but the stillness of someone who had been cold for so long that shivering had given way to something heavier and quieter. Her dress was pale blue, thin cotton, absolutely wrong for an October evening in Vermont. It was soaked flat against her skin. A small, rolling suitcase sat beside the bench, half submerged in a puddle that had formed where the asphalt dipped. Her hands were folded in her lap. Around her eyes, she wore a cloth blindfold. No, not a blindfold. A wrap, the kind used by people with severe light sensitivity, or by people who were navigating a world they could no longer see. She was not moving. Daniel had driven past 1,000 things in his life that weren't his problem. You couldn't live in the world and stop for all of them. He knew that, but Rachel had said something once he couldn't even remember the context now. Some conversation years ago on a porch with wine and fireflies, she had said. Asterisk. The things we drive past become the things we carry. Asterisk. He hadn't understood it fully then. He understood it fully now. He pulled over. The truck shuddered to a stop on the gravel shoulder, and he sat for one more second with the engine running and the rain hammering the roof, doing the quick, useless calculation that people do in moments like this. Times. Is it safe? Is it my business? What if times? And then he thought about Lily in the rain. Lily on a bench. Lily not moving. And he turned off the engine and got out. The cold hit him immediately. The rain was icy and immediate, soaking through his flannel shirt in seconds. He crossed the road with his head down and stopped a few feet from the bench, not wanting to startle her. "Hey," he said, quietly. "The way you speak to someone who might be frightened." She flinched. Both hands came up in a defensive gesture, half rising from the bench. "Who's there?" Her voice was dry and cracked in the way that voices get when someone has been crying for a long time and has run out of tears and kept crying anyway. "My name's Daniel. I'm not going to hurt you. I just saw you sitting here and I wanted to make sure you're okay." A pause. Rain between them. "I'm fine," she said. "I'm waiting for someone." Daniel looked at the empty road in both directions, looked at the dark fields, looked at the puddle swallowing the suitcase wheel. "Last bus came through at 4, he said, gently. "There's not going to be another one tonight." She said nothing. Her jaw tightened. Beneath the wrap over her eyes, something moved, maybe a blink, maybe a wince. "I'm fine," she said again, but this time her voice cracked on the second word, and the crack spread through the sentence like a fault line, and Daniel understood that fine times was the furthest thing from true. He stood in the rain, and he looked at her, really looked at her. She was probably 30-something. Dark hair plastered to her neck and shoulders, lips pale from cold, hands that were shaking now, trembling in her lap with the rhythmic, helpless quality of something that has been going on too long to stop on its own. "My daughter's at home," Daniel said. "Her name's Lily. She's 7. I have soup. Well, I have the Times ingredients, Times for soup. My brother's there too. He's harmless." He paused. "I'm not asking you to trust me because I deserve it. I'm asking you to come inside somewhere warm, because it's 41 degrees and you've been out here in the rain." A long silence. The rain didn't ease. Then, very quietly, "How do I know you're safe?" It was a fair question. A wise question, actually. The question of a woman who had stopped assuming safety was the default. "You don't," Daniel said. "Not for certain. But I'm going to give you my phone so you can tell someone where you're going. And I'll drive you wherever you need to go after that. Or call anyone you need me to call." Another silence. "My name is Clara," she said finally. "Clara Bennett." "Hi, Clara. I don't have a phone." Daniel didn't ask why. "Not yet." He simply held out his hand, then remembered and said, "My hand is out if you want to take it. No pressure." A moment passed. Then Clara reached out, found his hand with the unerring accuracy of someone who had learned to navigate by touch, and stood up. She was lighter than he expected. Not fragile, that wasn't the right word, but diminished. Like someone who had been slowly given back, piece by piece, over months, until not much was left. Daniel carried the suitcase. It was shockingly light. Whatever was in it couldn't have been more than a change of clothes and maybe a few small things. He opened the passenger door and talked her through getting in the height of the step, where the handle was, where to put her feet in the same low, patient voice he used when Lily woke up scared from a nightmare. Not condescending, just careful. He turned the heat up full before he even put the truck in gear. For the first several minutes, neither of them spoke. The heater whirred. The wipers scraped their inadequate path across the windshield. Clara sat with her hands wrapped around herself, the shivering slowly working its way through her in visible waves. "There's a blanket behind the seat," Daniel said. Old army surplus thing. Not pretty, but it's warm. She reached back with both hands, found it, pulled it around her shoulders with a movement that was practiced and efficient. She had been navigating a sightless world long enough that it showed in the economy of her gestures. "How long have you been waiting out there?" Daniel asked. The answer came slowly. "Since about 3, nearly 4 hours. In the rain. In a cotton dress." Daniel kept his voice even with some effort. "Who were you waiting for?" Clara was quiet for a moment. "My husband," she said. "He said he'd be back. He said he was just going to make a phone call." Daniel looked at the road ahead, said nothing. The farmhouse was set back from the county road behind a stand of maple trees that in daylight would have been spectacular. Full autumn color, deep red and amber, but in the rain and dark looked like a dark wall. The porch light was on. Through the kitchen window he could see the overhead light and the blue flicker of Marcus's phone. He called ahead before he even got out of the truck. Marcus answered on the second ring. "You're late. I'm in the driveway. Come outside, and don't be weird." "When am I ever weird?" "Every day of your life. Come outside." Marcus was 29 and built along the same broad lines as his brother. But where Daniel had grown deliberate and careful with age, Marcus moved through the world with an easy looseness that made him seem perpetually surprised by his own good luck. He came out onto the porch without a coat, took one look at Clara being helped out of the truck, and immediately became the best version of himself. "Hi," he said. "I'm Marcus. Come inside. It's ridiculous out here. No questions, no staring, just come inside." The house was small and warm and slightly cluttered in the way of houses, where a man lives alone with a child boots by the door, a crayon drawing taped to the refrigerator, a novel face down on the couch. It smelled like wood smoke from the stove in the corner and something that Marcus had apparently attempted to cook, judging by the state of the kitchen. "I made pasta," Marcus said, with the confidence of someone who has never met a pot of pasta he couldn't overcook. Daniel settled Clara onto the couch by the wood stove she found it herself. Hands light on the back of the sofa, and went to the upstairs closet where Rachel's things were still kept in 2 cardboard boxes. He hadn't been able to give them away. He hadn't been able to keep them out. So they existed in a compromised state, packed but present. He brought down a pair of thick wool socks, a flannel shirt, and a pair of sweatpants. Soft things. Warm things. Marcus showed Clara to the bathroom with a quiet, uncharacteristic delicacy, explaining where the towel rack was, where the light switch was, even though she wouldn't need it, where the hook on the door was. Lily appeared at the top of the stairs in her dinosaur pajamas, dark eyes wide with the focused curiosity of a child who senses something important is happening. "Daddy," she said in a stage whisper. "Who is that lady?" "Her name's Clara. She was cold. We're helping her." Lily considered this for approximately 1 second. "Okay," she said, and came downstairs. When Clara emerged from the bathroom dry, wrapped in the flannel, the blanket still around her shoulders, Lily was sitting on the couch with her legs crossed, waiting with the patient intensity of someone who has decided they have something to say and is merely awaiting the appropriate moment. Clara lowered herself onto the couch with careful precision, hands testing the cushion. "Hi," said Lily. Clara turned toward the voice. "Hi, I'm Lily. I'm 7. Why are you wearing that on your eyes?" Lily Daniel started. "It's okay," Clara said. Something in her voice softened. "I wear it because I can't see. I'm blind." Lily was quiet for a moment. A real moment, not a polite pause. The kind of silence that means genuine thought is happening. "Does it feel like having your eyes closed?" she asked. "A little. But I've gotten used to it. You learn to hear more. And feel more." Lily reached out and put her small hand over Clara's. The gesture was completely unself-conscious. It was the gesture of a child who had not yet learned that touch requires explanation. "You can feel that," Lily said. "Yes," Clara said, "I can." "Then you can feel that the blanket is soft." I can, and that the fire is warm. I can feel that too. Lily nodded, satisfied. Then you're okay, she said. Daddy always says if you can feel the warm, you're okay. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway, watching his daughter hold a stranger's hand in the firelight, and thought about Rachel, and about luck, and about the way children sometimes move through the world with a moral clarity that their parents spend entire lifetimes trying to rebuild after losing it. Clara slept in Rachel's old reading room, a small room off the hallway that had been converted into a guest space 3 years ago when Daniel's mother had visited for Christmas, and they'd all pretended it wasn't. Heartbreaking to change it. In the morning, Daniel made eggs, real eggs, from the 6 hens he kept in a coop out back, because Lily had wanted chickens the way 7-year-olds want things with a totality that left no room for debate. He made toast. He made coffee strong enough to justify its existence. Clara came to the kitchen by herself, one hand trailing lightly along the wall, then finding the back of a chair and sitting. "Thank you for the room," she said. "You hungry?" "Yes." A pause. I don't know how to thank you for. You don't have to. Eat something first." He set the plate where her hands were resting and described where the fork was, where the glass was. She nodded and ate with the careful deliberateness of someone navigating a world mapped entirely by memory and touch. Lily had gone to school. Marcus had gone to his shift at the hardware store in town. It was just the two of them at the kitchen table, with the rain finally gone and the morning light coming flat and gray through the window, and the chickens making their small, indignant noises out back. "The man who told you to wait at the bus stop," Daniel said, after a while. "That was your husband." It wasn't a question. Clara's fork paused. "Victor," she said. "Victor Hale." She said the name the way you say the name of something that used to be precious and is now just wreckage. With a kind of exhausted precision. "We've been married 4 years. We met in Burlington. I was doing a show there, for my jewelry designs. He came to the opening." She paused. He was very charming. He was the kind of person who makes you feel like the room tilts when he looks at you. She set the fork down. 9 months ago, I got an eye infection. Endophthalmitis bacterial. It moved fast. By the time the doctors understood what was happening, the damage was done. Both eyes. She said it flat and clean, the way someone says it who has already cried about it 10,000 times and has nothing left to cry. It was treatable if we'd caught it earlier, but we didn't. Daniel said nothing. He watched her hands on the table. "Victor was wonderful about it at first," she said. "Or he seemed to be. He quit his job. He said he wanted to be home, to help me through the recovery and adjustment. He drove me to appointments. He reorganized the house so I could navigate it." She paused. But then things started changing. Slowly. He started handling all the money. Said it was easier, with me not able to see the accounts. He started vetting my calls, said he'd relay messages, that it was less confusing for me. I don't have family close by. My parents are both gone. My sister lives in Portland, and I hadn't talked to her in months because Victor always had some reason it wasn't a good time. Daniel turned his coffee cup slowly on the table. "He'd been planning something," Clara said. "I know that now. I think even before the illness, maybe. Or maybe the illness showed him an opportunity. I don't know which is worse." She lifted her face in the direction of the window, not seeing the gray sky, but facing it anyway. "Yesterday, he said he was taking me to a new specialist in Burlington. We drove for almost 2 hours. Then we stopped somewhere. He said it was a rest stop. Said he needed to make a call. He helped me to the bench and said he'd be right back." The sentence ended. No words after it, just the weight of what right back had turned into. "How long before you understood?" Daniel said quietly. "About an hour." Her jaw worked. "I kept telling myself there's traffic. His phone died. Something happened. I told myself the stories you tell yourself because the other option is too. She stopped. I had no phone. He'd taken it 2 weeks ago, said it was being repaired. I had no wallet, no cards. I didn't even have my white cane. I'd left it at the apartment because he said he'd walk with me. Daniel's hands were flat on the table now, pressing down, very still. He took everything, she said. All I had was a suitcase with 3 days of clothes. I think he packed it for me. I think he'd been planning it for weeks. Does he have life insurance on you? Clara looked up sharply, or in the direction of Daniel's voice, which had sharpened too. I don't know, she said. He handled all the paperwork. Daniel stood up. He went to the counter and brought back his phone and set it in her hands. I have a friend at the sheriff's department, he said. A detective. Her name's Emma Collins. She's good. I want to call her, but only if that's what you want. Clara held the phone. Her thumbs moved over its surface like she was reading it. What happens if I do? She said. You file a report. She investigates. If he committed a crime and abandoning someone in his care absolutely qualifies, she finds out. What if he comes back first? He won't come to Oak Ridge, Daniel said. He doesn't know you're here. He probably thinks you're still out there. The thought of it, of Victor Hale, wherever he was, assuming that Clara Bennett was still sitting in the rain in the dark, moved through Daniel like something hot and ugly, and he pressed it down because it wasn't useful yet. Call her, Clara said. Emma Collins had been with the Lamoille County Sheriff's Department for 11 years and had the professional patience of someone who had learned that the truth almost always surfaced if you simply waited in the right spot, long enough. She was 42, slight and precise, with short, silver-streaked hair and the habit of writing everything down in a small, wire-bound notebook, even when she had a recording device running. She came to the house that afternoon. She sat across from Clara at the kitchen table with her notebook open and asked questions in a steady, chronological sequence that moved without drama and without visible emotion. Though Daniel, sitting near the window with his coffee, could see in the set of her jaw what she actually thought about what she was hearing. It took 2 days for the picture to fully emerge. Victor Hale, full name Victor Alden Hale, 41, originally from Connecticut, had, in the 9 months since Clara's vision loss, systematically liquidated their joint accounts and transferred approximately $183,000 to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The transfers had been made in increments small enough to avoid triggering automatic flags across 6 different months, starting within 3 weeks of Clara's diagnosis. He started planning it almost the moment she got sick, Emma said to Daniel on the phone. The evening of the second day, in the flat tone of someone who no longer found this kind of thing surprising and had long since stopped expecting to. The life insurance? 2 policies, one taken out 14 months ago, one 6 months ago. She's the insured. He's the sole beneficiary on both. Combined payout would be around $850,000. The number sat in Daniel's chest like a stone. He wasn't trying to divorce her, Daniel said. No, Emma said. He wasn't. A warrant was issued that Thursday. Victor Hale's car was picked up on a traffic camera at a rest stop in Brattleboro on the night he'd left Clara heading south, toward Connecticut, toward whatever plan came next, in a plan that Clara's survival had derailed entirely. It took 9 more days to find him. He was in a motel outside Las Vegas, Nevada, which said something about the failure of imagination that seems to accompany certain kinds of cowardice. He was arrested without incident, which also felt appropriate. A man who had left a blind woman in the rain in October wasn't the kind of man who put up a fight when actually confronted. Clara stayed. The plan had been vague at first a few days, until things were sorted, until there was somewhere to go. But the days accumulated in the way that time accumulates when a person is slowly learning to breathe again, and nobody said anything about it, and then Clara's 3 days of clothes had been quietly supplemented by things from the thrift shop in town, and then she had a drawer. The state had a program for adults adjusting to vision loss. There was an orientation and mobility specialist in Burlington named Margaret Overbeck, 60-something, matter of fact, with a way of teaching the physics of a new world without making you feel diminished by the lesson. Margaret came twice a week. She taught Clara the technique of trailing, of using sound to map spaces, of the white cane as an extension of the senses rather than a symbol of limitation. Clara was a fast learner. Daniel watched her move through the house with growing confidence, first cautiously, hands testing furniture edges, then, more surely, the roots memorized and internalized. She learned the back steps, the 3-inch drop from the kitchen to the mudroom, the way the second step on the staircase had a slightly different resonance that served as a counter when you needed to know where you were. Lily helped in the way that children help, which is to say, without being asked and without ceremony. She described things. "The maple in the backyard is almost all red now," she told Clara one morning at breakfast. "Like a fire. But a slow fire." Clara turned toward her, smiling. "What does the sky look like? Gray. But the good kind, like a blanket." "There's a good kind? Daddy's gray," Lily said, with the certainty of a child who has divided the world into categories and is confident in their classifications. "It's cozy. Not sad gray." Clara was quiet for a moment. "I used to love October," she said. "You still can," Lily said simply. "You just love it differently." Daniel, eating his toast at the counter, said nothing. He just listened. What he heard, over the weeks, was the sound of someone remembering who they were. Clara had been a jewelry designer before, not hobbyist, not occasional. Professional. Her pieces had been in 3 galleries in Vermont and 1 in New Hampshire. Handcrafted silver and copper and bronze work with an organic quality that drew from botanical shapes, from the geometry of seed heads and branch patterns. Her hands remembered it before the rest of her did. One evening, about 3 weeks in, she asked if she could work at the kitchen table. She had a small case of tools, needle files, forming pliers, a flex shaft handpiece that had been in the suitcase Victor had packed, apparently not understanding what he was including. Whether he'd packed it to seem thorough or simply hadn't known what the tools were, Clara didn't speculate. She worked by touch entirely. Daniel sat across the table with a book he wasn't really reading, and watched her hands move across a piece of copper sheet with a kind of authority that was almost architectural testing, measuring, cutting with a precision that didn't need eyes to be exact. "You're good," he said, after a while. "I know," she said. "I forgot for a while. But I know." The piece she finished that first evening was a small pendant, a tree, copper, with roots as elaborate as the branches above, etched with a texture that was visible but also tactile. She ran her thumb over it when it was done and nodded, as though verifying something. She called Lily in from the living room. "This is for you," she said, holding it out. Lily took it carefully. "It feels like a real tree," she said. "Like a small, real tree. That's what I was going for." Lily put it on immediately, not waiting for anyone to help, the chain looping over her dinosaur pajamas. The story got out the way things get out in small towns through the ordinary channels of people talking to people. Margaret mentioned Clara's work to someone at the Burlington Arts Council. Daniel's friend Nate showed a photo of Clara's pendant taken by Lily and described to Clara before it was posted anywhere to his wife, who worked in a small gallery on Church Street. By February, Clara had 18 commissions. By March, she had a waiting list. The garage had been converted into a studio over a series of weekends. Daniel building the workbench, Marcus running the additional electrical, Lily painting a mural on the cinder block wall that she described carefully to Clara so Clara would know what was there. The mural was technically imprecise and emotionally exact. A tree with deep roots and wide branches, and, at its base, 3 small figures, whose identity was clear to anyone who looked. Clara's work was written up in a Burlington arts publication with the headline times "The Blind Jeweler of Oak Ridge*", a title she accepted with mild amusement. "It's reductive," she said to Daniel, "but not wrong. Does it bother you?" blindness being the headline. A little. But if it gets people to the work, then the work gets to do the rest. She turned the piece she was working on in her fingers, a brooch commissioned by a woman in Montpelier who had lost her daughter and wanted something to hold. The work doesn't care who made it, or how. Daniel watched her hands. He'd been watching her hands for months now, and it had not become routine. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "You've been about to ask it for a few days," she said. "I can hear it in your voice." He laughed, a surprised and genuine laugh. "Is it that obvious? People have tells. You get quieter before you say something that matters." He was quiet for a moment, proving her point, which he recognized and which made him smile even though she couldn't see it. "Do you miss seeing?" he said. "Not in general. I know you do in general. I mean specifically." Clara's hands slowed. "Faces," she said. "Immediately and always faces. I can't see your face." A pause. "I've built it from other things. The sound of your voice in the morning versus the evening. The way your footsteps change when you're worried about something. The fact that you never finish your coffee when you're distracted." She paused again. "I have a version of your face. I'm not sure how accurate it is." Daniel considered this. "Probably more accurate than you think," he said, "and probably more flattering." "Fishing," she said. "Absolutely fishing." She laughed. And he thought not for the first time. But this time, with a clarity he couldn't dismiss, that her laugh was one of the better sounds he'd encountered in the last several years, and that he would very much prefer to keep encountering it. Victor Hale's trial began in April, in a Burlington courthouse with tall windows that let in the particular thin quality of New England spring light, not quite warm, not quite cold, making no promises. Daniel drove Clara and sat with her in the gallery. Marcus came too. Lily was at school. This was not something she needed to be part of. Emma Collins testified about the financial transfers, the insurance policies, the timeline of the abandonment. She was precise and unflinching, presenting the facts with the neutrality of someone who knows the facts are damning enough without embellishment. Clara testified on the second day. She walked to the stand with her white cane and the confident economy of movement she had built over months of hard work and good teaching. She sat and gave her name and stated her relationship to the defendant without looking at him, which was both accurate, she couldn't see him, and appropriate, which everyone in the room understood. The prosecutor walked her through the timeline. Clara's voice was steady. She did not perform emotion. She simply described what had happened, in sequence, with the same precise and tactile intelligence she brought to everything else. At one point, Victor's attorney, a man from Hartford who had the slightly overfed look of someone accustomed to making problems go away, attempted to suggest that Clara might have been confused about events due to her disability, that her perception of what had occurred might have been, as he carefully put it, *incomplete*. Clara turned toward his voice. "My perception," she said evenly, "is built from every sense I still have, and I have most of them. I heard my husband's footsteps walking away from me on wet asphalt. I heard his car door close. I heard his engine start. I heard him accelerate down the road, and I heard the sound disappear, and I sat and counted the silence for 4 hours because there was nothing else to count." She paused. "I am blind," she said. "I am not confused." The attorney sat down. When it was over, when the questions had been asked and answered, and she was stepping down from the stand, she paused. She turned toward the defendant's table, not seeing it, but knowing exactly where it was. "Victor," she said. Her voice was quiet and final, like a door being closed. "You thought what happened to my eyes made me helpless. But everything I've built since the night you left me in the rain, every single thing I built without being able to see you, and that," she said, "is what I want you to think about." The jury took 4 hours. Victor Hale was convicted on charges of aggravated fraud, intentional abandonment, and criminal endangerment. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The offshore accounts were seized. After legal fees and the cost of the financial investigation, Clara received a settlement of just under $290,000. The recovered money, reordered by the court. She cried in the parking lot after. Not quietly. Big, ungainly crying that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with 4 hours of absolute composure suddenly being unnecessary. Daniel stood next to her and said nothing and put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him the way someone leans into something solid after a long time spent trying to be solid themselves. The thing about love, Daniel had observed, having had it once and lost it and then found himself, improbably, standing at its edges again, was that it didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive in a moment of revelation. It accreted. It was the 14th cup of coffee you made for someone before you noticed you'd stopped counting. It was knowing that she was awake before she made a sound because the specific quality of silence on her side of the house changed. It was the muscle memory of a route you'd driven 1,000 times, suddenly including a mental note about a pothole she wouldn't be able to see, even though she wasn't in the car. Clara felt it too. She told him so in October, exactly 1 year from the night he'd pulled over. They were sitting on the back porch in the evening, the maple tree enormous and blazing in the last of the afternoon light, and she said, "I think I've been in love with you for a while, and I thought I should tell you because I'm tired of not saying things." Daniel set his coffee down. "Yeah," he said. "Me too. Yeah, me too. You've been in love with me." Or, "Yeah, me too. You're tired of not saying things?" "Both," he said. "Exactly both." She smiled. He could see all of it, the real quality of her smile, the one that used the corners of her eyes, and thought that he had built a fairly accurate picture of her face too, over the months, from sound and habit and proximity, and that the picture was very good, but the real thing was still, somehow, a revelation. They were married the following October, because October felt right. It was their month, the month of the rain and the bus stop and the headlights and Lily's hand on Clara's hand and Marcus's pasta and all of it. The ceremony was in the backyard, under the maple. Daniel's mother cried. Marcus gave a toast that was surprisingly coherent and only slightly embarrassing. Emma Collins came and stood in the back and smiled in the contained way of someone who doesn't often allow themselves public softness. Lily was the flower girl. She had chosen the flowers herself, mixed autumn wildflowers from the meadow behind the house, goldenrod and aster, and the last of the summer chicory, and she walked the makeshift aisle with extraordinary seriousness, scattering them with both hands in the generous, inexact way of someone who believes the ceremony is important and wants to make absolutely sure. She had explained the flowers to Clara that morning, sitting on the edge of the bed while Clara got ready. "The yellow ones smell like honey," Lily said. "The purple ones smell like rain." I thought those were good because she paused, because the rain was kind of where it started. Clara reached out and found Lily's face and held it in both hands for a moment, the way she held pieces of her work when she was trying to understand their exact shape. "That's exactly right," she said. Clara wore a necklace she had made herself copper and silver, a tree with roots and branches, a twin of the pendant she'd given Lily 2 years earlier. Her hands had made it in the studio, by feel, by the accumulated intelligence of 1,000 hours of work. It sat at her collarbone and caught the afternoon light in ways she couldn't see but could feel warm from the sun. 18 months after the wedding, they had a daughter. They named her June, because Clara said she wanted a name that sounded like something beginning. June was loud and opinionated from the first hour of her existence, and showed no signs of moderating either quality, which delighted Lily and exhausted Marcus, and made Daniel laugh in the particular way that a second child's personality makes a parent laugh with full knowledge that you are in for it, and complete willingness to be. Clara learned the dimensions of June's face the same way she learned everything by hand, by patience, by showing up again and again, until the knowledge was solid. She didn't miss what she couldn't see of her daughter. She knew her daughter the way she knew everything now, completely, through every other sense, with a thoroughness that surprised even people who thought they understood. One gray November morning, the kind of morning Lily would call Daddy's gray, The cozy kind. Daniel had an errand that took him out past Millfield Corner on the county road. Clara was with him. June was with her grandmother. Lily was at school. It was just the two of them in the truck, the old heater whirring, the wipers doing their insufficient best. He turned the curve. The bench was still there, weathered worse than before, the metal awning edged with rust. The puddle where Clara's suitcase had sat was just another low spot in the asphalt, indistinct from 100 other low spots on a rainy Vermont road. Daniel's hands tightened slightly on the wheel, and Clara felt it. She felt everything in this truck, in this man, in the particular vocabulary of a person you have shared a house and a life and a table with for 2 years. "We're at Millfield Corner," she said. Not a question. "Yeah." She was quiet for a moment. "I used to think about that night a lot," she said. "In the first months, I'd try to figure out what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. I never came up with a good answer." Daniel said nothing. "I was so cold," she said. "I didn't realize how cold I was until I wasn't anymore. That's how it is with cold. You don't understand the full extent of it until you're in the warmth." She reached across the console and put her hand over his on the steering wheel. "That bench," she said, "I used to call it the end. In my head, the night everything ended." "I know," Daniel said, "but I changed what I call it." "What do you call it now?" She turned her face toward the window, toward the gray sky, the wet fields, the rusted awning in the rain. And she was not seeing any of it. And she was, somehow, seeing all of it. "The comma," she said. "Not a period. A comma." Daniel drove past. The maple trees closed behind them. The road went on, gray and wet and leading home, and on both sides of it the fields lay resting under their November sky, and somewhere ahead there was a warm house and a small daughter and a table and eggs from 6 complaining hens, and all of it waited with the patient steadiness of things that are genuinely yours. The wipers scraped their path. The heater whirred. Clara's hand stayed where it was. Asterisk. Some stories end at a bus stop in the rain. And some stories, the better kind, only pause there, just long enough to let someone get in. Asterisk.